Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and I'm here with a new guest today, who's someone I've known for a long time, back in another guy from my fan fiction days, and that's David Ellis. Dave, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm fine. Like I was just saying off air, I managed to survive the heat for another day, and it's now my weekend, so that's cool. Um, I do remember those heady days back in the 2000s of
Mm-hmm.
writing superhero fan fiction, and honestly, that's something that I still do. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember back when we were, all in that group. Back in the days of what was it called at the time, Yahoo Clubs or something, or Yahoo
Yahoo
Groups.
Groups, I think it was. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow, that was
yeah, and
that was
it was still up until I think it was like a few months ago. They finally closed it down.
right. Yeah. It was kind of amazing.
So anyway, why don't you take a few minutes and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I'm David Ellis. I'm a writer. I'm a recently, within this past year, I became a voice actor, and I do stuff like that. I do lots of role playing and stuff like that. But as far as the stuff that as far as the voice acting, like I'm still kind of in the amateur phase because I am a member of an audio drama group called 8TW, which is basically Akadeka Ganagon Theater Works. And that was started by a mutual friend of myself and Perry, who is Tom DJ,
Mm-hmm.
and who's been on a past episode of this show. And he's basically the creative director of that. He got the idea of, during this quarantine pandemic sort of thing, to finally do the thing that he's wanted to do for, since he was a kid, which is audio dramas and radio drama, stuff like that. So um how I got into that was actually a funny story, because it happened entirely by accident. Because another one of Tom's projects that he had done recently was this Justice League draft for a podcast on the Two True Freaks network.
That's right.
Uh,
Yeah, I took part in that as well.
yeah. And so I took part in that, and I was doing I was doing I was doing my own like audio recordings of myself, who I would cast in a football draft sort of thing for the Justice League, and I came up and I did characters like Captain Atom. I did like Black Canary. I did a few off the wall ones like Plastic Man from DC's Tangent. A number of different stuff, and so I think that was the reason that this accident happened. But I ended up receiving a message over Facebook Messenger from Tom DJ, and he was asking me, or his question was, so it was like, where I'm still looking for your I'm still looking for your auditions, or I'm still waiting for auditions for something. And I'm like, auditions for what? And he was like, oh, that's right, I'm sorry, this was a mistell, I meant to send this to someone else. And I was like, okay, great, what is it you're talking about? Because what? And so it turned out that he was trying to get this audio drama group going, so that he can do a Strangers in Paradise audio drama based on Terry Moore's comic book
Oh
series,
wow.
because he had gotten the go ahead from Terry Moore himself. And I was like, wait, what? You're doing what? And it turned out that the role of David Chin was up. He was still looking for some. He was still casting for that. So I sent an audition, which I'm sure was absolutely horrible. And but yeah, audio, like voice acting was something that I'd been wanting to do for years, and I'd done like a little bit on an amateur basis, like even circling back to the fan fiction thing there, Tom DJ had this podcast in the 2000s called Other People's Toys. It was
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
it was about our little sector of the fanfic community where we were putting out fan fiction in the form of, kind of mimicking the form of like a publishing schedule, monthly installments and stuff like that. So so I would actually do like these like commercials for that, hyping my own, group, my own corner of that universe. So I had like a little bit of voice acting interest and voice acting. I had a little bit of experience doing that, and so I was like, okay, I want to send you like I just basically like sent some auditions, and I just tried to get myself as like insinuated into AGW as I could, and I didn't get the part of David at first, but they had a few other side projects like public domain comic book theater, which is basically exactly what it sounds like, where where they basically take comic books that are from like the 50s and 60s and before that are in the public domain, and like adapt them into brief audio drama scripts, and so they were looking for people to fill various utility roles in that. So I'm like, yeah, I can be that kind of actor. I can definitely be the additional voices that you would see in the credits of an audio of like, like say if you're like watching a cartoon or some kind of feature with voice acting and you see like additional voices, I'm like, I can be those additional voices. So I ended up getting cast as like various like cops and sheriffs and firefighters and ghosts and stuff like that, and I ended up being the lead in a couple of those and whatever. And then for the second season of Strangers in Paradise, the role of David once again became available because that actor, ended up, parting ways due to like, scheduling and all that. And so, yeah, they were then looking for, a new David. And I'm like, well, I was up for that before. So, I ended up in a like live audition with like two other actors, who were also up for David, and we were all on the same Skype call, and we were just going through the script and acting out, and I must have impressed them because very shortly after that audition ended, I was cast, and I am currently the voice of David, who is one of the leads in Strangers in Paradise, and yeah. So and also in that group, I am I'm writing various things. Like I've written a script or two for Public Domain Comic Theater. I've done their VHS box theater thing where they basically, the idea behind that is like adapting well, not so much like adapting old B movies, but kind of the vague idea of them that was that the covers and back covers of the VHS or DVDs advertised, because they're like a lot of B movies that sound really cool if you like read the back of the DVD or the VHS box. You're like, oh wait, I can't wait to see that, and then the movie's absolute garbage. So we're just kind of taking the idea of like what was described on the box itself, and we're like, okay, we're just gonna make our own script based on that and just go in our own direction. And the thing I did was Death Code Ninja, which Tom had he posted a bunch of different like B movie VHS boxes, wanting to see if any of us were interested in that particular project idea. And I immediately saw that Death Code Ninja was one of them. It's like an 80s B movie with ninjas in it. I'm like, I know exactly what I want to do with that, and it is going to be a loving and completely bonkers like tribute to 80s ninja movies.
Hmm.
And like within about a half hour, I had emailed him like the outline to what I wanted Death Code Ninja to be, and he's like, okay, I guess we're doing this then. All right. And so I got working on the script, and he and the rest of the cast liked it enough that that I'm now following it up with a like a follow-up series called Foxes, which is an acronym and is basically the continuing adventures of some characters that I had created for Death Code Ninja, and
Hmm.
it's just kind of like spinning them off into their own like female fronted like action martial arts movie franchise. And the fact that I'm doing this in an audio drama is kind of a creative exercise in itself, because
Hmm.
I can't show you the action scene. I
Right.
could just basically like you know, in the script I put like you know, sounds of like, you know, punching and kicking and grunting and stuff like that, but you know, it's still, but I still, you know, like getting, you know, creative with the basic, you know, setups for the scenes. And
Hmm.
then, you know, as we're acting, you know, like as we go through the voice recording, you know, like there ends up being this there ends up being like this like block of time that we set up for like, okay, so we want you all to just start grunting and start doing like all kinds of martial arts sounds like yeah, go for the jaw, that all that kind of thing. And it is an absolute blast. I love working with these people. It's fun, like they have such a fun sense of humor, and like being in an audio recording is kind like is basically like herding cats. So, you
Hmm.
know, so people like, you know, Tom or, you know, Gene Hendricks or some of the others who are like voice directing at any given time, like I don't envy them, because like getting us to stay focused is kind of amazing.
Right.
Uh, but but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and anybody who's interested in that bit of insanity can check out 8tw.ninja. That is that is the actual website of it.
Hmm.
And we've got a bunch of different audio dramas, and we've got like the next year or two, you know, we've got a bunch of stuff in the pike. Something we're most recently doing is an audio drama of Trekker, a Ron Randall comic series that's been going since the 80s.
Hmm.
We've done like the first few episodes of that, and in that I play uh the main character's uncle Alex, who's a who's like a grizzly, I'm sorry, it's like a grizzled veteran police lieutenant who sounds kind of like this. He's kind of basically the Jim Gordon of that franchise. So
Hmm.
I end up talking like this and just sounding very worn out, you know, very worn out, but also concerned for my niece, who's this bounty hunter, whose ways I don't approve of, but just be careful, Mercy, you know, that kind of thing. So
Right. Right. Wow, really
uh
cool. So, how are those things being released? Are they being released like in podcast form? Are they being released as audiobooks? How are they releasing
um
those?
they're being released like on the like kind of a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Hmm.
When they're like their first run is on the Two True Freaks network, which is
Hmm.
twotruefreaks.com, or I think it's also like I think they might also have like an audio feed, like maybe on like Apple Podcasts or something like that.
Right. Right.
And but yeah, if you go to like twotruefreaks.com, you'll see
Hmm.
like the different like podcasts that they put out on a regular basis, and you'll find episodes that we release of ATW productions, like Strangers in Paradise and Trekker
Hmm.
and Public Domain Comic Theater, you know, like we put out stuff fairly regularly. And also we have a, I believe it's a coffee page, and like you'll find it on the atw.ninja um, website, which is basically kind of our blog spot that's like
Right.
hyping everything that we're
Hmm.
doing. And it's basically like we will put like, you know, collections of some of our stuff in like $5 downloads, so that's like a little bit of money coming our way. And I think we also have a Patreon that we're trying to get set up. So we're trying to move slowly but surely toward like some kind of monetization, some kind of like income for what we do, you know. But
oh, awesome. And so has Terry Moore talked to you at all about, have you heard about any feedback from him about your performance?
I don't think I've heard from him specifically on my performance, but he's been like just in general a really big fan of what we've been doing. And also Ron Randall has likewise been really effusive in his praise for what we've been doing. In fact, trying to remember has sat in on our recording. I think, but I know that Ron Randall definitely was, and Randall definitely, like I think he even voiced a minor character in the Trucker audio drama. So there's that. But yeah, so yeah, like basically what we try to do is we try and get the approval of whoever it is that we're working with, and you know, currently we're a tiny outfit, so we try and go for like the either the, you know, things that are in the public domain or things that are like small press creations where we'd have like, you know, where it's like maybe like, you know, one person who's making the decision, one or two people is making the decisions on that, and that's like the creator, or like maybe, you know, just one or two people who's like involved in that. So that's like so we don't have to go through a whole bunch of like corporations or whatever to like get our to like, you know, get approval for what we're doing. One of the things that we tried, like Tom is a you know, like he's got a bunch of like comic book creators who are friends of his, you know, including Jimmy Palmiotti. And at one point he was like, so are there any of your creations that we could do audio dramas on? And Palmiotti was, you know, immediately was like, do the Pro. And for those who aren't familiar, that is a black comedy about a prostitute who obtains superpowers and then is recruited for this like off-brand Justice League. And it is just basically this like scathing and absolutely, you know, vulgar like satire of superhero conventions. And like for about a year we were like waiting for, like we had like, you know, needless to say, we had Palmiotti's approval, and we were just waiting for Garth Ennis, who wrote the thing, to give his approval. And then like more recently, Garth, I think we finally heard from Garth, and he was just like, nah. And then we're like, okay, well, I guess we don't have to wait on that approval. So so yeah, on to other things. And but yeah, we've got a few other things that we're like trying to get, that we're like waiting on approval on, or like we're kind of in early talks. And you know, there's one comic book creator who's like not no, but give me 6 months for things to calm down, and then I'll give you an answer, that sort of thing.
Okay, cool. Wow. So it sounds like you guys are doing really interesting things over there. I had no idea. I knew Tom was doing some audio drama stuff, but I remember you mentioned something about that, but I didn't know how extensive it had gotten. That's really cool.
Yeah, and like I'd honestly like I was honestly kind of surprised that it wasn't mentioned in any kind of detail that I can remember, like when he appeared on a previous episode, because that's like one of his favorite things that he's doing, you know.
I think that probably had a lot to do just with the circumstances, because he was on to talk about that. It was right after Derek had passed away, so he came on to talk about that. So I think he was kind of pretty distracted at that time.
Makes sense. Okay.
But anyway, so today we're talking about a movie you picked out, and I remember watching this back when it first came out. I think I bought it like right away when it came out on iTunes, and that is Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which came out in 2019, animated movie directed by Jake Castorena, and it's a joint production between Warner Brothers Animation and Nickelodeon. So let's jump right into it. Before we talk about the movie, what's your history with? Were you a big Batman fan or a big TMNT fan going into this, or
Yes.
both?
The correct answer is yes,
Mhm.
because I've been fans of the both of them since I was a kid. Like some of my earliest memories were of seeing Batman on Super Friends in the 80s,
Mhm.
and like reruns of the Adam West Batman TV show, and so I knew who Batman was very early, and long before Kevin Conroy became like the accepted voice for him, or long before people just started agreeing that this is what he sounded like. Like Batman just basically sounded like a grade school or middle school teacher who was really
Mhm.
trying to get people, was really trying to get kids interested in science. Like he sounded like that kind of
Right, right,
guy.
yeah.
And so yeah, I was always, so yeah, like I was into Batman and Robin from an early age, and just like you know alongside the whole Super Friends and the whole like um Superman, who was for me simultaneously George Reeves and Christopher Reeve.
Mhm.
um and in fact I think, and honestly, he was more George Reeves to me, for the simple reason that I saw more that, like I was regularly watching the old TV show that I didn't realize was from the 50s,
Right,
like
right.
because I grew up in Dallas and in Fort Worth, and they have like and like at least since the 80s, and probably before that, they've had like entire TV stations that were just dedicated to like syndicated programming. So
Mhm.
I would see TV shows from all different eras and have no concept that they came from like different decades. And also I was seeing most of them on a small black and white TV in my room
Mhm.
that had to have been from the 50s. So most things that I watched were in black and white. So I had no concept of like what reruns were for the longest time. Um, and as far as the Turtles, my first uh, my first exposure to them, I distinctly remember this was in the late 80s, like very shortly before the toy line came out. There was
Mhm.
this show on there was this like commercial on TV that was like hyping the toy line, and also and also had like clips from the cartoon.
Mhm.
And it was just the weirdest thing that I had ever seen, because it was like these are turtles, they live
Mhm.
in a sewer, they eat pizza, they are
Mhm.
totally radical, they ride skateboard. Like I don't recall the exact wording was, other than they eat pizza, and like
Mhm.
basically that inflection. And like I think my brother and I were like watching TV with like the babysitter we had at the time, and I was just looking at that. I was just like, and the babysitter was saying what I think we were all thinking, which is, what are they going to come up with next? Like we just all thought this was like completely stupid looking,
Mhm.
and it was basically out of sight, out of mind as soon as that commercial ended. And then like sometime later, the toy line started being advertised in commercials, and I'm like, oh, there's that. Okay, I guess this is still something that's happening.
Mhm.
It's still just as weird. I don't get it.
Mhm.
Also, like I don't even know if I even wondered why so much of the commercial was animated, because well, that was part of the experience of toy commercials, back in the 80s, where like
Right.
um there would be footage of kids playing with the toys. There would be footage from there would be like animated footage of the toys in action, and or both. I mean,
Mhm.
like some commercials had both. Some of them had one or the other. Some of the animation was like made up entirely for a commercial. Some of it was like footage from a commercial, from a cartoon that existed,
Right.
and so
Yeah. That was
forth. And
the
so
that was the big thing that a lot of cartoons and a lot of toy lines were doing back in the 80s, because I think that was when the restrictions on product placement and all that had gotten kind of loosened, so then they were able to basically create toy lines that create these animated series that were just created for the toy line. That was how Master of the Universe was the first one of those, I believe.
Oh yeah, and that just like snowballed all throughout the 80s.
Yeah,
meaning it was a great time to be a kid because it was just all this like, awesome like toys and cartoons and not even much concept that the cartoons were like just to sell the toys and that we were just basically being manipulated by marketing. It's just like, I want that cool thing and it's on TV and I'm also seeing it in the toys and I want those toys. And it's just, and then, like playing with the toys and just kind of like, and for me at least, not having very many toys and just basically having like hand-me-down toys from cousins and something like that, and just like assembling this hodgepodge of like bizarre of like just these bizarre adventures that like utilized whatever was at hand. And I will say this, like those pretend sessions that I had with my toys had like commercials in them. They actually had commercial breaks because that was part of the experience for me. Because like the interest, because like the cartoons would like be at their most exciting right before a commercial break. So commercials were part of the experience. So I would actually factor in commercial breaks and act those out too.
I remember acting out opening credits myself when I did that when I was a kid.
So did I. Yes, because those were part of the experience. And of course, they would be the most, they would be the best animated parts of the shows because they actually put the time and the money into that animation, and then that would be the animation that we would then convince ourselves was carried through the entire show. And then of course, as once we got older, we'd then watch those shows again and be like, what?
Yeah, and you realize how many sequences they reused and over again.
Yeah, it's like, wait, was the animation that bad or cheap or sloppy the entire time? I don't remember that. And then you look back and it's like, oh, that was just the animation in the opening credits. That's just what we transposed on everything. Okay, that makes sense now. So it is, so like just is kind of the experience of being an 80s kid. And then like and I saw so many of those Turtles toy commercials that after a while, like seeing so much of the animation, I'm like, so is there an actual like cartoon that's happening? Like, am I just missing it? Is it coming on like in the morning when I've already gone off to school? Like is it happening then? According to the TV guide, no. So what is this? And then like I was then blindsided at one point by the premiere of the cartoon, like in the afternoon after I got home from school, and I'm like, this happened? What?
Yeah, the Netflix series, The Toys That Made Us, they did one on Ninja Turtles, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, like they said that there was some scheduling difficulties, and that's why the commercials actually ended up coming out before the show actually premiered because they had trouble finding a network or something like that, I believe it was.
They had the hardest time finding any executives that were interested, any funding for the toy line, any toy lines that wanted to pick this up, anything at all. Like Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, who created the property, like they like had like once once they debuted their comic series in 1984, like it got surprisingly popular in ways that they could not have foreseen, to the point that like the second issue of their comic series ended on a specific line of dialogue, which was one of the turtles saying, well, it worked. And that was their commentary on their unexpected success, because like they were they had this like really crazy idea, and like getting anybody to pay attention to it was an uphill battle. But then they were surprised by the attention that it actually got, and
Yeah.
then like it then caused them to basically like have to fend off like Hollywood like marketing executives, like just fend them off with a chair and a whip,
Right.
and
Right.
just be like, no, not that, no, not you either. That's way too scuzzy. No, not
Mhm.
interested in that either. And just kind of go
Mhm.
through that, and then finally, like there was this. Finally, like there's this one guy, I believe his name was Mark Friedman, who's an advertising guy, and they're like, okay, we've gone through so many of you at this point, like we're willing to actually work with you if you can give us results on a very short time frame.
Right.
And so he had to like and so like he just had to like uh call every he had to call like every contact he had. He had to like knock on every door he could
Mhm.
find, and
Mhm.
then just try and sell this like insane property to people. And then like Playmates Toys was the only one that actually bought it because because they were this doll company that was desperately trying to do something different. And
Right.
they were
Right.
like,
Yeah.
we'll try this, sure.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that was a really. I got to rewatch that episode again. That was a really good episode that the Toys That Made Us did about that. But anyway, so about this movie was actually based on a comic book that was done by James Tynion the Fourth and Freddie Williams the Second. Did you ever read the comic that it was based on?
I think I ended up reading let's see. I did end up like I managed to track down an issue at one point, and then like much later, I was finally able to uh, read the whole thing, and like they had a few different series of that because it was popular,
Right.
and one of those they actually kind of just like went feet first into the whole Elseworlds thing, and even had this like alternate dimension where like Bruce Wayne was orphaned, and like he was raised by Splinter alongside the Teenage Mutant Ninja
Oh,
Turtles.
okay.
It was so bizarre, but it was like really cool. And like and like yeah, um one of the mini series that they did with the Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like I believe it actually ended with this like splash page of like various Gotham villains being mutated into animal hybrids by
Hmm.
mutagen, and then they actually expanded upon that for this animated movie, which I enjoyed the hell out of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they even did. There was one that was based on the animated series version of Batman and the
They basically
Nickelodeon
did.
cartoon one.
Yeah, they did a miniseries that was there was a basically a fusion of Batman the Animated Series along with the 2012 uh, uh, CGI
Right.
animated series, and those two animated styles actually fit together a lot better than I would have expected. But yeah, like they were both kind of loose and cartoony enough that they could actually kind of fused together with like they were exaggerated enough that it was like, okay, I guess this works, sure.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't expect that just looking from the TV shows, but just looking at, I haven't read that miniseries, but just looking at the artwork and the preview pages on Comixology, it's a
Mhm.
really nice style. It looks like it really worked. Looks like it would really work for this series.
Oh yeah, and I read like a little bit of that, and it definitely seemed like it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely a pretty good use of uh, both shows, especially with the idea of the turtles taking on Clayface. I mean that ended up being a really fun sequence.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember. I'm not sure if I read the whole thing. I remember reading at least some of this comic book,
Mhm.
but it was a while ago, so I'm not really very. I don't remember
Yeah,
much about it.
yeah.
But what were your thoughts watching this movie?
Watching the movie, yeah, like you, I bought it immediately when it came out. I bought the DVD Blu-ray copy,
Hmm.
and in fact to prep for this earlier in the week, I brought out the I brought out that Blu-ray version again, and I watched that, and yeah, I like it was basically as fun as I was hoping this this kind of crossover would be, and like you can definitely tell that the people making it are like really big Turtles fans who were just basically like set loose by the opportunity to actually do Turtles. Almost it seemed like almost every frame was like a love letter to various aspects of the different Turtles franchises, to the point where where like they were it was almost like, how do I put it? It was almost like the Batman portion of it. The Batman portion of it was almost sidelined in a "do we have to do Batman" sort of way. It's like, do we have to bring this guy into it? I mean, we're having so much fun with the Turtles, do we have to? But honestly, though, it like they just had like the right amount of fun that I would hope for with this kind of thing, because what they ended up doing was they leaned into all the different ways that the Batman franchise is like incredibly fun and bizarre, because a lot of recent depictions of Batman have been like leaning on the dark and gritty and
right.
violent, and this is a very dark journey in this, and like you're not going to have any fun at all, and you're going to have exactly as much fun as Batman is having, which is none. And it's and all that, and then like this movie is like, okay, so let me get this straight. There's a villain named the Penguin who's wearing a tuxedo. He has all kinds of umbrellas that do various like gags, and he has a bunch of like thug henchmen. And I love this touch that the character designers like had the henchmen all wear like these t-shirts with the tuxedo design on it. Like
Right.
they were all wearing that, and I'm like, that is a brilliant touch, and I love this. And of course they had Michelangelo as the exact person who would notice all this and be like, this is amazing, I want to live here, not understanding how like dark and violent and tragic day-to-day life in Gotham is. He's just a tourist having a blast. He's like, this is awesome, bro.
Now for me, I actually thought I thought it was kind of funny that you mentioned that you thought they were almost felt like sideline, like the Batman stuff was sideline. I felt like it was a decent balance of both, because there's lots of references to a lot of Batman stuff I picked up, like
Fair enough. Yeah.
references to stuff in the animated series. Even like the whole look of Batman, it's very much evocative of like the Neil Adams style, or the
I
Brave
did
and the Bold
notice
one.
I did notice that, yeah.
And then like even when Batgirl takes the selfie at the end, that was a direct reference to Cameron Stewart's
Right.
Batgirl run at the time. So
I did notice those, and yeah, I think the thinking on the
plus
way
the
they
airship too was also something that jumped out at me, because that was something that was the big aesthetic of the animated series, was the whole airship
yes.
thing.
Yeah, they had so much fun with that. They're like, yeah, we're just going to bring in the blimps from the animated series, and of course we're going to have the Turtles comment on that, because again, they're not beholden to the fact that this is supposed to be like dark and serious. Michelangelo is going to be like, I wonder what those are for.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, and like toward the end of the movie, it comes back and actually has a use. And I did notice that it was like 70s Neil Adams Batman, or like basically what he looked like throughout the 80s. So they're like, well, the Turtles is an 80s property, and so if we're gonna pair him up with Batman, he's gonna look like he did in the 80s. So
one of the things that really struck me, and I didn't realize it, I don't know, because it'd been a while since I've watched it. I watched it when it first came out, and then I hadn't watched it again until last night to prepare for this episode. But the thing that jumped out at me right from the start, that I guess maybe I was maybe a little bit sleepy the first time I watched it or whatever, but stuff that just I wasn't paying as much attention to it the first time around. But this time around, like the opening credits were amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just like the design they used in that sequence was unbelievable. Like the black and white, and then the little flashes of color here and there. I thought that was extremely well done.
Yeah, that in the end credits sequence where they just let it all hang out and they did all these like parodies of various Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles covers where they'd
Right.
have like where they'd have a specific cover to a Turtles comic and they put Batman or the Shredder in it,
Hmm.
or vice versa. They'd have like an iconic Batman cover and they'd have the turtle, they'd like manipulate it so that it looked like the turtles were in it. It's just like, okay, like this could not be clearer that this is a love letter to both
Yeah.
franchises, but
Yeah.
particularly the turtles,
Yeah.
because yeah.
I remember one of
it,
them really jumped out at me was there was a one of the covers was for Raphael, one of the micro series, and it was
yeah.
the original cover was Raphael versus Casey Jones, but they
Mhm.
changed it to Nightwing using his original '80s costume.
Yes, yeah, I noticed that and I'm like, okay, that's absolutely perfect. Yeah, that was that was the first Raphael micro series. Yeah,
Hmm.
the because back in the Mirage days, Eastman and Laird would have these like alongside their Turtles series, they'd have a number of different other comics that they do, and they'd have the occasional one shot comic that would like focus on a specific
Right.
turtle, and the first one of those was Raphael, and they call those a micro series as a gag of like DC calling their one shots, or no, they're calling their like they'd have like mini series,
Right. Yeah.
of like 4 issues or 5 issues or whatever, and they're like, well, this is one issue, so it's a
Hmm.
micro series, just kind of leaning into the gag of that. And yeah, the
Right.
first one of those was a Raphael micro series that was the first appearance of Casey Jones.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And also the references too. I did notice as well. There was that reference. I think it was when the turtles first appear, and it's very much evocative of the original animated series opening credits.
Yeah, there was a shot where they were standing on
They're
a
all on the roofs. Yeah, yeah. And it's
yeah,
just like,
standing on the roof, yeah, like on like several different roofs on, and they're like, looking badass, and they're kind of,
mhm.
posing, and it's like, yeah, that there's that exact one. And there's a shot at one point where Michelangelo was like deflecting things with his nunchucks the same way he did in the 80s cartoons
Mhm.
opening. And yeah, they like, yeah, there was like so much staging that was like directly from animated series or comics and stuff like
Right.
that. So yeah, they were, like I said, like this was such a fun love letter.
Yeah, and I really like the way they did the design, like the character design in this, the artwork. It's it's interesting because looking at it, like the turtles look amazing, but
Mhm.
and Batgirl and Robin also look really good. But looking at it, just the images at first, the first thing I thought when I saw the images of this, I'm like, I do not like their Batman design, but watching it, you completely forget about that. It actually works really well. But
Mhm.
the thing I especially liked about the turtles designs was the way they had worked in things that were kind of goofy in the original animated series design, like the letters, having their letters on their belt buckles.
Mhm.
I always thought that was kind of goofy in the '80s animated series, and but they found a really clever way to work that in here, where it's just like the style of their belt loops just happen to resemble the letters. I thought that was a really clever way to do that.
Yeah, they I really do like the character designs that they had for the turtles. They made each one look visibly
Mm-hmm.
distinct, not only in what they were wearing, how they wore their gear, also like body types. Each one had a distinctive silhouette,
Right.
back in '84 when they were first coming up with this franchise, Eastman and Laird, like didn't really think of like, how do you tell these characters apart? They
Mm-hmm.
always knew which characters were saying what, even when there wasn't the signifier of like what weapon they had,
Right.
you know and then once it was being shopped around, for like animation, for the 80s cartoon, the people working on it were like, okay, we need to know who's who, and the
Mhm.
kids are definitely going to want to know who's who. So what can we do here? Can we
Right.
color code them? And like, I don't know whether this was like not this was intentional, but like the color coding ended up being kind of reminiscent of like Japanese tokusatsu,
Mhm.
like if before there was Power Rangers, and like and with stuff like Voltron being a recent memory,
Mhm.
like there was a certain color coding alongside different weapons that worked for them. But more recent animation, more recent um properties dealing with the turtles have found different ways to make them visually distinct from each
Right.
other.
Yeah. Yeah. The '80s show, it was just basically the same character models for all of them, just different colors palettes.
Yeah, and
Whereas,
what that
yeah, I think the 2003 animated series. I think that was the first time that they had really made an effort to visually distinguish and use like different character body types and everything for each of the turtles.
that one not so much. Like the 2003 series, they like there's even a like on the character model sheets there was even a note that the turtles were basically depicted as like identical
Hmm.
quadruplets.
Hmm.
It's just their coloring would set them apart. But like I think the first one to actually um do this in terms of animation was like the 2007 TMNT movie, which I enjoyed quite a
Oh,
bit.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. That one definitely did a lot more with like distinctive body parts,
Hmm.
body types, like specifically like definitely with Raphael, making him the physically heavier, kind of
Right.
more
Right.
muscle bound
Hmm.
type. And because he's been usually depicted as like the brawler kind of type,
Hmm.
most depictions of the turtles these days, make him look as huge as possible in comparison to his brothers. And
Hmm.
usually these days, Donatello is like the skinny one because hey, he's the one who's like working with computers all the time. So I guess he doesn't exercise as much as the others do.
Right. Right.
You know,
One thing
um,
I like is just the way they had Leo's swords, because having now learned more about the samurai and all that kind of stuff, like the fact that he had the swords on the back it's a very strange way of doing it, because they didn't actually wear swords on their back. So in
yeah,
this
yeah,
show though, they put it at the sides, which is how they traditionally are worn. So I thought that was a nice little touch as well.
yeah, and that serves a number of purposes to me. Like one, it depicts Leonardo as more of a stoic samurai warrior type
Hmm.
because, well, let's face it, the turtles are called ninjas, but not a lot that they do actually like coincides with what a ninja would do. Like for
Right.
instance, like in Dungeons and Dragons, recently with fifth edition, they have a race called the Turtles, which is like basically like humanoid tortoises.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I want to make a Ninja Turtle with that rule set. And like they have a ninja class of character, but I'm like, this doesn't fit with what like Ninja Turtles do. So instead I went with
Hmm.
the monk class because they have this they have this subset called the Path of the Kensei
Hmm.
sword saint. So basically, you can like specialize a monk into like being trained with a specific weapon and going on this warrior path sort of thing. And I'm like, that fits Leonardo perfectly. So I'm
Hmm.
gonna create this turtle monk named Rio, which is as close as I could get to Leo,
Hmm.
and just basically play Leonardo in Dungeons and Dragons, that sort of thing. But yeah, the idea is that like he fits more of like a samurai type than he does like
Right.
a typical uh that he fits a typical ninja. And the other purpose, behind having the swords at his side is that he doesn't have to reach them because like I never understood why they were like strapped to his shell. It's like,
Hmm.
how would he reach them?
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
have a
also,
like
it's the nice thing too. I noticed too is that the elbow pads are even reminiscent of samurai armor, like the cleaves on the samurai armor. It's very similar style of that. And just like those little touches I thought were really nice that they did here. And I think
Yeah,
Leo's the only one that had that kind of thing, because I'm looking at some of these images here and it looks like Mike at least has just regular, smooth knee pads and elbow pads.
yeah. They even did some differentiation on like I said, the way they're wearing their gear or what kind of gear they're wearing. Like if you Raphael, I think instead of like just having like those leather or cloth wristbands that
Mm-hmm.
are often seen on the turtles, like his are just like these leather hand wraps
Yeah,
that
yeah. In
that
fact, I noticed that I was going to mention the same thing. None of the characters have those. They don't have those wrist wrap things except for Raphael, and it's almost like a boxer's taping.
yeah, he tapes his hands
Mm-hmm.
like a an MMA fighter or a boxer or something like that. And that's something that a lot of recent depictions of Raphael have done, where like each of the turtles has such a vastly different fighting style from each other. You've got Leonardo, who's a for obvious reasons, he's a samurai
Mm-hmm.
sword fighter. Michelangelo is kind of a break dancer a lot of the time, and he goes for all kinds of like flashy moves and stuff like that. He will do like skateboarding and surfing moves while he's
Mm-hmm.
fighting, or like I said, break dancing, or just bust out Bruce Lee moves with his nunchucks. Donatello is a technical fighter, and like a lot of people are wonder why it is that the most high-tech turtle is the one with the wooden stick. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, he's that's like it he can still do a lot of uh technical moves with very precise strikes with his bow, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
whirling around, like spinning it around, that sort of thing. And that fits his fighting style, where he only fights if he absolutely has to, because he's usually like the most pacifistic of the group. And then of course there's Raphael, who's the angry one, and he's the one
Right.
who gets into the most fights. So like a lot of the inspiration for how he fights, particularly in like animation and in video games, is MMA fighter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so like he'll do like MMA and like Muay Thai kickboxing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought they did a really nice job differentiating those. Even like you were saying with when you're talking about Donnie too, I noticed that in some of these images, like his belt actually has like pouches and compartments and things like that, which is something that would make sense for his character to have more stuff to
Yeah.
carry around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always figured that like if you're going to go through the trouble of like drawing them with belts, put something on the belts, because they're not holding pants up.
Right. Right.
Over and above just being ways to stow their weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Like occasionally they'll be depicted as like having throwing stars or grappling hooks. So
Right. Yeah.
pick them as like having places on their belt to store that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Makes
Yeah. Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So see what else I want to jump to. One of the things that really impressed me too was Troy Baker, who did the voice of Batman, but he also did the voice of the Joker. And
Yes.
I was watching this, and I was because his Batman is it's obviously influenced by Kevin Conroy, but it's not quite the same as Kevin Conroy's, and you could tell it's not Conroy. But even as Joker, like I was questioning whether or not that was actually Mark Hamill doing the voice of the Joker, because and then I had to go look it up, and I was surprised because when I saw that it was Troy Baker doing both of them.
Yeah, and I believe that was the same voice as the Joker from Batman Arkham Origins, because I know it was a
It
different
was yeah, it
Joker.
was a different it was a different Batman too, I believe. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if it
yeah,
was
I
Troy
think it was.
Baker who did it in that one.
I don't think it was Troy Baker doing doing Batman, but it was he said but he sounded definitely similar to that. But yeah, it was but yeah, the Batman and Joker in this movie ended up sounding very similar to the Batman and Joker from Arkham Origins, who in turn were intentionally, sounding similar to Conroy and Hamill.
Mhm.
And yeah, I definitely like that. And I was definitely amazed that in this movie both Batman and Joker were the joke were the same voice actor. I'm like,
Yeah.
has that ever happened before?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think this is the first time that it's been done. So yeah, you're right. Troy Baker did do the voice of the Joker, and he also did the voice of the Joker in the recent Long Halloween animated
Okay,
movie.
I still haven't
Um,
seen that.
I haven't seen that either. I'm waiting until they come out with the combined two-parter.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and then Roger Craig Smith was the one who did it in Arkham Origins.
Right, yeah, that's the name I was thinking of. It's like, okay, it's one of the voice actors who has like who's billed with three names,
Hmm.
and it's like something, and and it was and I headed down to him or Robin Atkin Downs, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So
Hmm.
what's the other one? And then so yeah, Roger Craig Smith, yeah, it's that one. But
Yeah,
yeah, you did a great job, and yeah, um I like the voice casting. I like um the acting on the turtles, and the different Batman villains, because they just brought out almost the entire rogues gallery just to let it all hang out. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, they did the voice actor. They were a really good job, and especially brought back Tara Strong as Harley Quinn as well. I noticed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I like her Harley Quinn. Not like a lot of it seems like not a lot of people do, because a lot of people prefer Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn, which she was definitely the first one, and she defined the character, and she was also the voice that Paul Dini had in his head
mhm.
when he first conceived the character. But at the same time, having played Batman Arkham Asylum, which I believe was Sorkin's like last role, like it seemed like that was kind of like labored on her part, and like her voice was like had gotten too gravelly for it, and no offense at all intended
Mhm.
for Arlene Sorkin, but it's just like but I think it was one of those cases where the writing was kind of on the wall, that she just couldn't keep doing this, and Tara Strong, I think, was a good successor, because yeah, she can go into that audio quality as Harley Quinn, and be the right kind of
Yeah,
playful.
I'm kind of surprised to hear that people didn't. The people are have something against Tara Strong because I thought she was. I've always thought she's done a great job.
Yeah. I just heard some negativity toward that, and I guess it's just you know they prefer Arlene Sorkin, or it doesn't sound entirely right, but
It's just typical fanboy bitching type stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. I don't take it too seriously. And she's already had a number of voice actresses, as Harley Quinn, to begin with,
Hmm.
Hendon Walsh and a few others, a couple of actresses from Big Bang Theory, etc. And they've all had various,
Oh yeah,
roles.
yeah. What's I'm trying to remember her name. Katie or Kaylee or
Katie Coco.
yeah, yeah. She's great on the Harley Quinn animated series.
Yeah, and a friend of mine has been just hounding me to watch that show, and I'm like, it's on my list, I
It's really
promise.
good. It's definitely
Yeah,
worth a watch. It's a lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
fun.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, I should definitely make time and catch up on that, because I have seen clips of it and all that, and I do think it's a lot of fun what it is they're doing. Like, I especially like her as Harley Quinn, and I especially like the Killer Shark, or what's his name, King Shark,
King Shark. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
King Shark.
he's amazing. He's one of my favorite
Oh
characters on the
yeah,
show.
he is absolutely hilarious. And I like how recent depictions of King Shark have just leaned into how absurd the talking
Hmm.
shark is, and and whether it's the Suicide Squad movie that's coming up, that just has Sylvester Stallone being like, and
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
or just this really comedic take on King Shark, or Gail Simone writing the character in what was it, Secret Six, and just be like, I'm a shark, 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 I'm a motherfucking shark, which a podcast that I had listened to years ago had like guessed that that particular line of dialogue was meant to be like sung in the William Tell overture, and like Gail Simone actually confirmed it, because a lot of people were like, how, what, I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a motherfucking shark, what? But no, apparently it was like it was supposed to be read as in the tune of the William Tell overture, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, that doesn't, knowing Gail Simone, that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, and like stuff like that. Like I like that kind of like really fun quality, because particularly with stuff like Batman, particularly stuff with Ninja Turtles, because I just like I can kind of get behind some of the dark stuff, but to a point. I think stuff like Batman the Animated Series was kind of like about the right balance that that it would need to be, where
Right.
there's a lot of like serious stuff going on, and like it's treated seriously and all that, but at the same time, at the drop of a hat, it can lean way into like Warner Brothers cartoon stuff, and there's a lot like this acknowledgement that like, yeah,
right, yeah,
this is silly stuff. And same with the Turtles, where like there's a lot of like complaints in the fan community that like various cartoons and comics just aren't dark enough, and it should be a lot more dark and bloody, because back in the day the Mirage comics were like really dark, and there's like, and the Turtles would kill people, it's really bloody and stuff like that. And I'm like, you do realize that this stuff, that their overall intention was to be as goofy as possible, right?
Yeah, they were parodying a lot of that stuff. Yeah,
they were leading into the stuff that they loved about comics, which was like making this as silly as possible. And heck, the very inspiration behind the Turtles was Eastman and Laird playing with each other, because they lived in the same house, and they watched a lot of like bad TV together, and they had this game called Dueling Sketches, where Kevin Eastman would pester Peter Laird while Laird's watching television, usually cop shows like Law and Order, or stuff like that they were watching in the 80s, or whatever they had to watch in the 80s, like cop shows, ninja movies, stuff like that. And Kevin Eastman was like, had this idea, based on martial arts movies, like, okay, what is the dumbest animal I could possibly draw as Bruce Lee? And so the idea of like drawing a bipedal turtle with like nunchucks strapped to his arm, meant to be a martial artist, like that just cracked him up. So he scribbled that on a napkin and handed it to Peter Laird and said, hey, look, this is the Ninja Turtle. And apparently Peter Laird just like that cracked him up. And their Dueling Sketches game was basically a game of yes and, to use an improvisation term, where it's like, okay, I'm going to draw the same thing but then add something to it. Right. And so he drew like I think it was either like more, he drew like 4 of them, or he just like drew more than one and just like tossed it back, and then like they just kept going back and forth, and then and like adding to the name Ninja Turtles, it'd be like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just to make it sound even sillier. And then they were just like cracked up by this idea, and then they're like, okay, what do we do with this, because we really want to draw this. And like they were just, and so they thought that they had this potential for a comic book series. And then it's like, what do we do with this? So they just like threw in everything that they liked at the time about comics, not only the comics that Frank Miller was doing at the time, which was like Ronin and Daredevil and Dark Knight Returns, stuff in that era, but also, like Jack Kirby comics, because that was how the two of them first made friends, was they were both they were both like struggling artists, commercial artists on the East Coast, and like a friend of a friend introduced Kevin Eastman to Peter Laird, being like, well, those two is like, here's an artist I know who does like artwork for this newspaper, so here's his contact info, maybe you can have a conversation with him. And so he did, and they hit it off immediately, talking about Jack Kirby comics.
Yeah.
And so, and then like after a while they moved in together, and they just became this like team. They started they did various like independent comics. Like there was this series called that they did called Gobbledygook that I think was their initial was like the initial like anthology comic that they based Mirage Studios around, because the Mirage was their apartment building, their studio didn't exist. It was just like it was just them, their apartment or their house, their like art supplies and like drawing boards. That was it. That was the studio. So they called it Mirage Studios, and they their one of their first projects, if not the first project, was the Fugitoid, which was about this robot this scientist who had this robot helper that due to this like freak accident involving lightning, got his consciousness like transferred into the robot. And this robot was then a fugitive of this like fascist military outfit, and was labeled a fugitive, or
which ended up having they ended up having the Turtles cross over with that as well.
Because they were like because once they got the Turtles line, the Turtles comics going, they were doing, they were bringing in more and more Jack Kirby influences. And so it's like, well, why don't we have him meet the Fugitoid? And the comics where they met the Fugitoid was like, that was my first experience. That was my first exposure to the Turtles comics, or at least the Mirage comics, because First Comics had put out these full color collections of the early comics. And at the time I was getting into comics in, I believe it was 91, because I was 12. And I was in school, like, and in homeroom I had there was a friend of mine who started bringing his comic books to homeroom, and I was like, oh, those look cool, I want to read those. And so he'd toss them to me, and we'd read them in homeroom, and I would read stuff like, so he had stuff like Batman comics and Captain America and Spider-Man, and when he saw that, like and when I saw the book 2 of the Turtles collection, it was like and that was after I had seen the 1990 live action movie, which was so much different than the 87 movie, right? So then
from the 87 series.
87 87 cartoon.
Because they based the movies. Eastman and Laird had a lot more control over the movie, from what I understand. So the movie was a lot more true to the comics in that sense. So much so that in the sequel, when the studio had wanted to do Bebop and Rocksteady, and Eastman and Laird refused because they hated those characters.
Yeah, they were like, but we want this movie to be more like the comics.
Right. So they ended up
we can create characters that are, for this movie, but we don't want to bring in Bebop and Rocksteady. And but anyway,
which is a lesson Michael Bay should have learned, but that's another story.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't particularly mind Bebop and Rocksteady as characters in like movies or whatever, like, and like particularly in the current IDW comic series, they're great. But anyway, the collection, that book 2 collection, like I had heard that the cartoon series was based on a comic book series that had come before it, but I had just assumed that it was like the cartoon. And then of course, like, alongside the cartoon was the Archie Comics series, that
Right.
Archie Comics was publishing, and that was very much like the cartoon, but kind of spun off in its own direction. So I'm like, okay, so it's like that. And then I got this collected edition, and I'm like, oh, okay, because then I saw how the then I saw how the live action movie was kind of a hybrid between the cartoon and the comic book series. I'm like, oh, this makes sense now.
Right.
Now I understand why the turtles looked like that in the movie. I understand. Okay, this makes sense now. This makes sense now. Okay, this is weird, but it also makes sense. And so from then on, I like the 1990 movie had already been this transformative experience to me, because I was just like, oh, this is a much different version of the turtles than I was used to. And then I was like, and then it just became like, and then I just wanted, and then it just became like, it started overshadowing the cartoon to me, and then like seeing the collected edition of the Mirage comics, I was like, oh, this is actually what that was supposed to be in the first place. Okay, I want to look more into this. And so I just kind of like lean more heavily into that. And around that time, the cartoon was getting further into its seasons and kind of like rolling downhill in terms of quality. So I was just kind of like becoming less and less interested in that. And Turtles became this franchise that in a weird way and in an accidental way was kind of growing up with me, because as I was like aging out of like some of the more kid friendly stuff, I was discovering, some of the some of the stuff that was like aimed for like an older, like, independent comics sort of audience. So I'm like, okay, this is more interesting. But at the same time, I never got to the point that like some Turtles fans I've seen where they're like, Turtles should be like violent and edgy, and they're ninjas, so they should be killing people, and there should be like boobs everywhere and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, it's like, like this should be like, regardless of what kind of tone you have, like this should be playful and fun in at least some way. And like just even when you're going through like serious stuff with the Turtles, like just the fact that this, the serious drama is being acted out by these mutated turtles that have hands like Nightcrawler, and like for some reason, we're supposed to accept they're ninjas, but they wear like these, bandanas with eye holes in them and stuff like that. Even at their most serious, there is this like, playfully tongue-in-cheek, aspect to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I kind of gravitate to, that version of them, and I have absolutely no interest in who the Turtles are killing at any point. I'm interested in how they live. I like when they're like having fun with each other, when they're like being siblings, when they're having arguments with each other, when they're being like introspective, when they're like living out on the farm in Northampton and like kind of filling out that way, or when they're making friends with humans or aliens or whoever else. Like they adopt basically everybody they meet, given half the chance. I mean, like I kind of like the found family aspect of the Turtles, where they they were adopted by their father, who was a rat, and they make friends with humans, and while they get into fights with like various people who like cross their paths, they're also more interested in making friends, like they made friends with this like violent vigilante with a hockey mask on his face, and he mellowed out, from being around them,
Right.
that kind of thing. So, I like stuff like that. I like
Yeah.
how they live. And now I realize that I might be talking way too much, but
No, you're right, and that's some of the best adaptations of the Turtles. They managed to find that balance because because if you look back at the '80s series, it's not that good. It's actually pretty bad. It's just it's
the comic series or the
no, I'm
cartoon?
talking about the animated series.
Right. Yeah.
It's really not that good. It's the Turtles don't have much differentiation in their personalities.
Mhm.
It's very just '80s, cheese,
Yeah.
animated cheese. But
Well, they
when
have. Oh, sorry. They do have like differentiation in their personalities, but also like without a lot of complexity to them is what I've kind of
there's some, but it's very, very, very surface level. It's like it's
yeah, like and it can basically be summed up in the
mm,
in the theme song,
exactly, yeah, yeah.
like
But if you look at like the 2003 series though, and the the first two live action movies, or the 2007 animated movie, or this movie as well, like they do a good job of having these serious aspects of it, but as well as still acknowledging the fact that it's a pretty ridiculous concept that they're working with.
oh
And
yeah, a good like illustration of that was in the first movie in 1990 where they were
mhm,
where like one of the early scenes is Master Splinter trying to like calm them down after they've just had their first topside fight, and they're all like, yeah, we've had our first battle, and like they have all this like teenage hyperactivity, and he's like, and he wants to like lean them in meditation, and like Michelangelo is off to the side ordering pizza, and like
mhm.
he just gets them all calmed down. He closes.
Hold on, you just cut off.
Oh, I did.
There you go.
Testing,
Now you're back.
testing.
Now you're back.
Okay, yeah, we hear a record scratch, and his eyes just like widen as
Mhm.
like we hear tequila on a record player, and the turtles are dancing to that, and they're like, well, this is like meditation,
Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's that kind of thing, and you know I think one of the reasons that movie was such a mind-blowing experience for me was because that was the first time I thought of the turtles as brothers with Splinter as their father, because
Yeah.
that was actually stated outright at various points, and they had like the entire plot of the movie like centering around that. The
Right.
idea that like in an early scene Splinter was like, I may not be here. You will have to fend for yourselves.
Mhm.
And then that became the plot of the movie in a way I wasn't expecting. It was
Yeah.
like, oh no, they have to figure out how to like fend for themselves and how to be a family without him in a very sudden sort of way. And that was in contrast to the '87 cartoon where like I mean they were like I kind of got the sense that they were kind of like kids who all grew up on the same block, so to speak. Like they weren't necessarily brothers, but they spent all their time together, and they were
Right.
just like
Yeah.
kids who like play together in the same block because that was a
Mhm.
point of reference I had growing up with
Mhm.
with kids who lived on the same block. Like it was that sort of thing. And even in that cartoon, Splinter would be constantly, referring to the turtles as my sons, but
Mhm.
like for some reason that like I never really got the sense it was anything more than like he was their sensei and not so much their father.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then the live action movie just made that explicit, and then I couldn't unsee it. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And so like that just became the version of the turtles that I saw. And I do like, getting back to this movie in
Mhm.
particular. They made sure to include that as an element to the story in there was this contrast in how the Bat family operates and how the Turtles operate, because
Hmm.
Batman and his sidekicks, they are a family,
Hmm.
and like but in a way that like it's kind of implied but not so much stated outright, because like Batman is kind of the father figure, but also like Alfred is the grandfather, and then
Hmm.
his kids are the various Robins and the various Batgirls, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And only recently did he have a Robin who's his like biological kid,
Hmm.
and then here he comes along and he's this like utterly entitled little shit
Hmm.
who's like my mother's Talia, my father's Batman, so this is my inheritance. I'm going to
Hmm.
be. It's like I am Robin, and then like the other Robins, former and otherwise, are just looking at him like, no, that's not how this works. You have to earn this, and
Hmm.
also you're being insufferable right now. Quit it. Um, and oh, also that's something else I like about this is about this movie is the depiction of Damien, because like he is so hilarious in this movie as this like little kid who was just basically affronted by everything around him,
Hmm.
especially the turtle's very existence.
Yeah.
He's like and I love Michelangelo's like first exposure to him, where he's like perched on top of the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the Batcave while wearing one of Batman's like cape and cowl
Hmm.
combos, just like basking in how awesome everything is. And then Robin shows up and is about to kick Michelangelo's ass, and Michelangelo's response is, "Ah!" It was so funny. And then like and a short fight ensues, and then like Michelangelo just like ends up like basically sitting on Robin with his
Hmm.
head, with his like head and limbs like tucked into his shell, and Robin's on the ground like kind of throwing a temper tantrum like, get off me.
What I
And
especially liked about those is that the the contrast between them, and because of how similar those characters are in their upbringing. Like they're both raised by these martial arts masters, except the difference is that the turtles had each other, and they also, Splinter actually loved them and cared about them enough to let
yeah,
them be kids, whereas Ra's al Ghul did not have that same thing with Damien, and that really came through very well, I thought. Whereas like Damien is, you see this kind of like struggle with him. He's a kid. There's a part of him that wants to be a kid, that wants to goof off, but he's got this lifetime of upbringing and discipline. So that even so, like at the end, I love that scene at the end when Batman reveals that he bought pizza for everybody, and then all the turtles, just jump. They start digging in, and then Damien's got this kind of wistful look on his face, but he's trying to hold himself back, and then Batman gives him a slice of pizza himself, and just like gives
yeah,
him permission to be a kid for the first time. I thought
yeah.
that
Or
was
that Yeah, or
I,
that scene where like Michelangelo is in the Batmobile and just having the most ADHD freak out
mm-hmm,
possible as he's like pushing every button,
right,
and then
right,
in the distance, Robin is watching is like watching like all kinds of like fireworks and projectiles just pour
mm-hmm.
from the Batmobile. It's like I wanted to push all the buttons, it was so funny, and I love the just the kind of like low key bromance that Damien ends up having with Raphael, where they're just
Right.
kind of like they're just kind of like off to the side, just kind of like wordlessly, just kind of like chilling, and Donatello and
Batgirl.
Batgirl instantly hit it off, and because they're off to the side, at the science lab, coming up with a retro mutagen, and debating the appropriateness of the term ooze,
Mm-hmm.
and then like when they show off their results, it's like it's perfectly safe, so don't worry. And then Batgirl's like, maybe worry a little because there's still a chance you could die from this. And then like Damien and Raphael are like, no, get that away from me. And
Yeah.
Damien's like, I agree with I agree with the turtle. Stand over there.
Yeah. Well,
it
also
was so
that,
fun.
and there's the other little reference to the Batman comic books with Oracle saying, or Batgirl saying that her screen name is Oracle.
Right. Yeah, I did notice that. And like um and I was actually surprised that they didn't do the gag of Donatello's screen name being like being Does Machines 84, because that's what it is in the IDW comics.
Right, yeah, yeah.
But they did the Does Machines gag elsewhere in the movie, so I guess they didn't want to repeat themselves with it, so they
Probably,
gave
yeah.
them like a, I think it was, what was it, like Bo Staff fan or something like
Both
that.
both staffs are awesome or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and so yeah, they. But I was just thinking that gag was like right there, because that was a gag that they've used previously, and they're not shy about this sort of thing. But
Well, I also love the post credit scene where you have it, which is kind of a nod to the second live action movie with Shredder being infected by in this case it was the Joker's venom, but in the second movie it was the U's. So
yeah,
that was
yeah,
and well also the little they kept the fact that he was scarred by Splinter, which came from the first movie.
yeah, like yeah, a lot of depictions of the Shredder have that facial scarring, which I think might have actually started in the I could be wrong, but it might have actually started in the 1990 movie.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think that was a thing previously, and like it certainly wasn't in the '87 cartoon, because he would take off his faceplate, on a semi-regular basis, or
Right.
every
Right.
once in a while, and he'd just be this Japanese guy with an unscarred face. But yeah, like they
Voiced by Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince.
yeah, James Avery. Yeah, like I like I'm sure the look on my face was priceless the first time I found out it was the same actor. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But he did such a yeah, he was so memorable in that role, and he brought so much like comedy and nuance to it, to the point where it was actually kind of a disappointment in the uh in the 90s and 1991 movie, where like Shredder had like the deepest, most intimidating voice possible. Money cannot buy the honor you have gained here. And it's just like, okay, great. Although I will say, I did think it was kind of funny, the bit where it is like the Foot Clan are your family. I am your father. And it's like, okay, yes, we know you're leaning into Darth Vader here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we get it. We get it.
Okay. So I think that's about or about the end of time we have for today. So do you have any final things you wanted to say about this movie?
Okay, final things about this movie. Let's see. Something I didn't touch on was the martial arts choreography, which they spend a lot of time and care on. Like they had an entire bonus feature documentary on it about the way they staged the martial arts, and a lot of the thought that they put into it. That was really cool. Like I think one of my yeah, I think my all-time favorite thing that they did in that movie was like the one-on-one sword duel between Leonardo and Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
That was just freaking cool, because that was like samurai swordsmanship versus like European and kind of and South Asian fencing and stuff like that. And they even included a thing which and they even included like Leonardo actually stepping on Ra's al Ghul's foot to break his stance, which is something ninjas have been known to do, where they'll confronted with a more rigid and formalized sort of style. They'll just be like, okay, how can I like upset this stance that you have? I'm going to step on your foot,
Mm-hmm.
like that was a fun touch. So yeah, I liked a lot of the choreography that they did. I really like the animation. Something that I did think, like, I think my one complaint about this movie was like was the fact that they kind of um, brought out the levels of like uh gore and violence from like other DC animated movies. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was like at least one beheading, and there was some like gore and stuff like that, and it's just like, this, like, I appreciate that this is kind of the thing you do these days,
Mm-hmm.
WB animation, but this is really flying in the face of the rest of this movie. Like this,
Mm-hmm.
like it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you didn't need to have like like beheadings and stuff like that in this movie, and especially because like kids are going to want to see this movie. They're going to want to see this
Mm-hmm.
this very cartoony animated movie of the turtles teaming up with and fighting Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And also I really did like the the what do you call it, oh, the Batman's rogues gallery that had been all mutated into animal hybrids. Like they had a lot of fun with that. It was really cool. And they're even doing something similar in the current comics that are published by IDW. There's
Mm-hmm.
this storyline that's basically Mutant Town, where a where there was this kind of like terrorist attack with this mutagen bomb that was like set off at a political rally, and it ended up like releasing this releasing mutagen in like this cloud format that ended up blanketing the east side of New York. And yeah, sorry, and I will wrap this up, but yeah, they um yeah, they basically, citizens of New York are have become these animal hybrids, and it's this like long storyline that they're doing, which I highly recommend people
Mm-hmm.
check out. But yeah, like this is one of my favorite things that has come out in the past few years, and I was um I even submitted it for, like, I believe it was the episode 50 that you guys were doing,
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
the audio commentary, just to see Derek Ferguson's like reaction
Mm-hmm.
to like this, and particularly the way Michelangelo experiences Gotham City. And so and yeah,
Yeah, I think Derek would have gotten a kick out of this movie. He
yeah,
because I remember when we did do the first Ninja Turtles movie, and he ended up finding a lot of things he liked about that, and so he also likes the more lighthearted depictions of Batman and like the Brave and the Bold and stuff
mhm.
like that. So I think he would have, if we had ever gotten around to doing this before he passed, he would have definitely gotten a kick out of this movie, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And all right, well, that should be about it for me. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was
Why don't you tell people where they can find you online?
okay. I am on Twitter at HR Streaming, and that is a reference to a YouTube channel that I have that was basically me. Well, I kind of still have it. I haven't updated that in quite a while. But I was doing like reactions to stuff online, and also like video game playthroughs and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And but I did that like a couple of years ago. But it's still on YouTube if you want to search for that. And also, another thing to plug is I do a is I'm still doing fan fiction of Marvel superheroes, and it's a fan fiction community called Marvel Crossroads, and
Mm-hmm.
it's marvelcrossroads.wordpress.com, and I've been doing that for a few years. I'm basically running the site, and I'm writing X-Men and Amazing Spider-Man and a few other things. So yeah, you can check that out.
Okay, great. Well, Dave, thanks so much for coming by, and I'll have
Mhm.
to come back, have you come back on another time to talk about something
Oh,
else.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to do that. So yeah, we should brainstorm. So
Yeah. All
all right.
right. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. Superherocinephiles.com is the website. Super Cinema Pod on both Twitter and Instagram. Please sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, use the contact form over on the website. Again, superherocinephiles.com. That does it for now. And I believe the next episode, we're going to have a guest on to talk about Black Widow. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching. Visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com, and remember to subscribe to watch more of our videos.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.